The night was still, a silence so dense it felt like sound itself had frozen mid-air. From the tower, miles of forest stretched below like a black ocean, unmoving under a heavy sky. I'd been awake too long, staring into the void, half expecting something to stir where it shouldn't. Then the siren screamed. It wasn't supposed to, not unless there was fire or an intruder. My radio hissed dead stat. No voices, no chatter from the base. Just me, the echoing alarm, and a sudden paralyzing awareness that something was very wrong. I reached for the binoculars, hands trembling. The forest below was alive with movement. Not flame, but shadows shifting in unnatural synchronization. Every instinct told me to run. But where does one go when the danger surrounds the mountain itself? When the siren died, the quiet that followed was worse. The kind of silence that presses against your ribs until breathing feels like trespassing. I called into the radio again, the word base, dissolving into static. No one answered. My flashlight beam cut through the glass, trembling as I swept it across the tree line. The shadows I'd seen before were gone, leaving only drifting fog and the whisper of leaves. I started logging the incident. Procedure? Habit? Anything to feel grounded. But the pen shook in my hand. Then the smell hit me. Not smoke, not earth. Metal. Blood. It was coming from below the floorboards. I pulled up the hatch to the lower supply room. The light swung wildly, painting the stairs in gold and shadow. Something dripped from the ladder. Slow, deliberate. A thick sound like water with weight. I whispered to myself just to hear a human voice, but it sounded alien in the confined air. The smell intensified. My boots stuck slightly with each step, the boards tacky beneath them. The siren box sat wired to the wall, undamaged, no fire, no malfunction, which meant someone had triggered it manually. The deeper I went, the colder the air became. My breath hung like smoke in the beam of my light. I reached the bottom and saw the locker door ajar, supplies scattered, boots missing, the faint outline of a hand smeared across the metal. My radio crackled once, 3 short bursts. Then silence again. I turned toward the stairs, but something above shifted, creaking softly. Someone was in the tower with me. I killed the light. My pulse hammered in my throat. Above, slow footsteps circled, deliberate, heavy, pausing between boards. Whoever it was knew I was here. I pressed my back to the wall, forcing each breath through my teeth. Then the siren blared again, but this time only once. One fractured wail that broke off mid-scream. I waited, unmoving, until a drop of liquid fell from the ceiling, splattering across my hand, warm. I looked up. The boards were bleeding. When I finally climbed back up, dawn was just brushing the horizon, a gray wash over an endless canopy. The siren had gone silent for good, but the radio was alive again, faintly repeating my name in a voice that didn't sound quite right. It was deeper, slower, almost rehearsed. I tried to trace the signal, but it shifted frequencies like it knew I was listening. My logbook was gone. So were the binoculars. And when I checked the door latch, it was bolted from the outside. That's when I saw the footprints, bare, muddy, and leading toward the catwalk. Only one set. The same size as mine. The forest looked different in daylight. Not calmer, just exposed. Every tree seemed closer than before, like the woods had shifted overnight. I stepped onto the catwalk and scanned the horizon. The valley below was glazed in frost, though the air was too warm for it. The footprints stopped at the railing, no sign of descent. I leaned out to see the ground and froze. At the base of the tower, something long and pale was hanging from the support beam, swaying gently like a discarded skin. By noon, the heat pressed down thick and unnatural. My compass spun without direction, and the radio voice had grown bolder. whispering coordinates that didn't exist. I tried the generator, but it coughed once and died. Power gone. Even the clock on the wall had stopped at 2 a.m. I thought of the supply cache 2 miles south, the one I'd checked only last week. Maybe there I'd find answers, or at least a road out. I packed the essentials, slung the rifle, and stepped into a forest that no longer felt like the same place I'd guarded for years. The trail was wrong. It wound in circles, repeating terrain that shouldn't repeat. A log I'd stepped over 3 times, a carving in the bark that reappeared every few minutes. My GPS flickered, screen blank except for a single blinking red dot that pulsed faster with every step I took. I called out once, half hoping for another ranger, half dreading the reply. The forest answered with a low hum like air moving through something hollow. Then the dot vanished. The trees around me stopped swaying, every branch frozen mid-breath. By the time I stumbled upon the clearing, the air was colder again, brittle and sharp. The supply cache was there, but it wasn't empty. Someone had arranged the crates into a perfect circle, each marked with a different symbol burned into the wood. My own handwriting was on the labels, though I'd never written them. At the center of the circle sat a single ranger badge, gleaming beneath the overcast light. I bent to pick it up, and heard a whisper directly behind me. Calm, familiar, and impossibly close. "You're late." The whisper didn't echo. It just existed, close enough to feel the breath of it against my ear. I spun around, rifle raised, but the clearing was empty. Only the circle of crates, the badge glinting like an eye. My heartbeat drowned out everything until I realized the sound wasn't just mine. Beneath it, steady and rhythmic, came another pulse, deeper, slower, like the ground itself was breathing. I took a step back, and the earth beneath the badge quivered. The symbols on the crates began to smoke, thin tendrils curling upward. I didn't stay to watch. I ran. The forest closed in as I fled, branches snatching at my sleeves, the mist thickening until I couldn't tell direction from dream. Every path led back to the same ridge, the tower visible in the distance, flickering like a mirage. I should have been miles away. My lungs burned as I climbed the slope again. But the closer I got, the older the tower looked. Wood warped, windows shattered, Siren rusted and silent. A crow perched on the railing, head cocked. It was watching me with one good eye, and something human in the tilt of its gaze. Inside, everything had shifted. The furniture was where it shouldn't be. The maps gone, walls covered in photographs. All of them of me. Different seasons, different uniforms, but always the same expression. Blank, waiting. I tore one from the wall and found dates scrawled on the back. Years that hadn't happened yet. My knees nearly gave out. Then I heard the siren click once, like a throat clearing. The radio flared to life. My own voice came through it, whispering coordinates I didn't recognize. I followed the voice. My voice. Down the coordinates scribbled into the dirt by my shaking hand. They led to a ravine at the forest's edge, where the ground seemed to breathe. A narrow fissure exhaled warm air that smelled of iron and rain. I leaned over and shined my flashlight down. There was movement, something smooth and pale coiling below, reflecting light like polished bone. The air vibrated with a low hum. Then the voice came again, this time not through the radio but from the darkness below. "You're almost there." I didn't remember climbing down. One moment I was staring into the void. The next, my boots touched damp earth. The air was pulsing. Alive. The cavern walls rippled like skin, breathing with impossible rhythm. In the center stood a figure, back turned, wearing my uniform, my posture, my stance. When it turned, I was looking at myself, only older, hollow-eyed, with soot-black veins crawling across his face. "You shouldn't have stayed," he said, And before I could move, the siren began again, echoing through the rock like the heartbeat of something ancient and awake. The air between us shimmered, dense with the heat of the siren's pulse. The older version of me didn't move, only watched. Patient, exhausted, like had already lived this 1,000 times. "It started with the call," he said, voice low and cracked. "You answered when you weren't supposed to." His words rippled through the air, bending sound itself. I took a step closer, the walls of the cavern trembling. "Who are you?" I demanded, though I already knew. He smiled, faint, sorrowful. "I'm the one who stayed too long." The siren roared again, red light splashing over our mirrored faces. He told me the siren wasn't a warning. It was a summoning. Each rotation of its light drew something closer from beneath the mountain, something that had learned to mimic the voices of the watchers who'd vanished. "You thought you were protecting the forest," he said, "but the tower was built to keep something in." My stomach turned cold. "Then why am I here?" I asked. He looked away, gaze drifting to the rippling walls. "Because I needed someone to replace me." The walls convulsed as if the mountain itself exhaled. A fissure opened behind the older me, spilling cold white mist into the chamber. "You can leave," he said, stepping aside, "but it won't follow me. Only you." I stared past him into the tunnel beyond, the sound of rushing wind and whispering voices twisting together. My flashlight flickered. "What happens if I stay?" He smiled that broken smile again. "Then you learn what the siren's been calling all this time." His voice cracked on the last word, and for a moment I thought I heard my own scream buried in it. I didn't choose. The ground did. It buckled, throwing me into the fissure as the older me reached out. Too slow. I fell through layers of light and sound that bent around me, the siren's pitch warping into a heartbeat that matched my own. When I landed, the world had changed. The forest above was gone, replaced by a black sky stitched with red threads of lightning. The tower stood ahead, its beacon still spinning. But this one wasn't wood and glass. It was bone and metal, pulsing like something alive. The siren called again, slower this time, like a heartbeat syncing with mine. Every step toward the tower felt heavy, like wading through memory. At its base, the door was already open, waiting. Inside, I saw walls lined with radios, each tuned to a different voice. Some were crying, some were praying. One was laughing softly, mine. I turned to run, sealed shut behind me. But the ground sealed shut behind me. The lights brightened, and in the center of the room stood another figure, younger this time, clean uniform, eyes full of confusion. My replacement had arrived. The younger version of me blinked in confusion, hand reaching toward the nearest radio. I wanted to stop him, to explain, but every word curdled in my throat. The siren pulsed once, and his reflection rippled. The same ripples I'd once seen in the window of the original tower. He looked at me, then at the siren core humming above us. "What is this place?" he asked. I opened my mouth, but the sound that came out wasn't language. It was the siren's tone, drawn through my chest, resonating in every bone. His eyes widened in horror. He knew then, and so did I, that the tower wasn't built by men. It was built by memory. The younger me reached for his radio. A reflex of duty, maybe hope. Static erupted, but within it came a pattern. My own screams played backward, overlapping with the sound of rain. I tried to tear the device from his hand, but he clutched it tighter, transfixed. The siren's glow deepened crimson, casting us both in the color of open wounds. He turned toward me, his expression shifting from fear to understanding. "It has to choose one of us," he whispered. I didn't ask what he meant because somewhere deep in my gut I already knew. It always had. The siren's hum grew deafening. Objects began to float, drawn upward by invisible pressure. The radios screamed and burst in showers of sparks. The younger me stumbled backward, shielding his face. I felt the pull in my chest, something tearing free. A fragment of me, raw and ancient, rising toward the light. The air smelled of ozone and wet iron. The siren's voice layered over itself 1,000-fold, whispering in unison, "Return." The younger me's form blurred at the edges, fading into streaks of light that bent toward the ceiling. He didn't fight it. I did. I hit the ground when it ended. The light receded, leaving only silence and the faint scent of burnt air. The younger version of me was gone. In his place lay a single object. The ranger badge, its surface cracked and pulsing faintly, like a dying ember. I picked it up and heard whispers inside my skull. All the voices of the watchmen before me, their warnings collapsing into static. My reflection in the metal wasn't mine anymore. It was older, hollow-eyed, veins darkening beneath the skin. The transformation had begun. I understood then. The siren never summoned the forest's danger. It preserved its keeper. I climbed back to the observation deck. Through the glass the forest stretched beneath me. Whole again, green and calm, dawn rising as if nothing had happened. But the siren wasn't gone. It hummed softly under my skin, patient, eternal. I sat in the old chair, the one that creaked just so, and picked up the radio mic. Static gave way to a voice I didn't recognize, young, uncertain, asking if anyone was out there. I looked down at my cracked badge, its faint pulse sensing to my heartbeat. "Tower 9 standing by," I answered, and watched the fog close in around the mountain once more. Days passed, or what felt like days. Time didn't behave normally anymore. The sun rose and fell, but the light never truly changed. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I only listened. The siren had gone quiet, but the hum beneath the tower floorboards had become my heartbeat. Sometimes I'd catch glimpses of figures walking through the fog below, their outlines flickering like projections. They'd pause, look up toward me, and then fade. I wanted to call out, but my throat was raw, my voice replaced by the static that lived inside my lungs. The tower was learning my rhythm. I started hearing things at night, the sound of typing, the shuffle of boots, the crackle of a fire that wasn't there. The voices came next, brief transmissions, fragmented reports from other towers that no longer existed. Tower 3 secure. Base copies. Signal breach. Then silence. Each voice carried the same cadence as mine, older or younger, distorted through distance. I began answering them, unconsciously at first, then deliberately. Each reply came faster, smoother, until I couldn't tell whether I was echoing them or they were echoing me. The line between the forest and the tower blurred completely on the third night. The trees swayed in rhythm with my breathing. When I blinked, I could see through them, lines of light tracing the roots beneath the soil, connecting to the tower's foundation like veins. The siren flickered once, sensing to my pulse, and for the first time, I felt it ask something. Not in words, but in impulse. Stay. My hand moved toward the console without command. I pressed the switch. Across the valley, a second siren answered, then another. The mountain began to breathe again. Voices filled the airwaves. Hundreds this time, each one calling from somewhere within the network of towers that should have been abandoned decades ago. I recognized some, the echoes of names long erased from ranger logs. Their transmissions layered into a chorus of static and breath. "We are here. We never left. Keep watch." I covered my ears, but the sound wasn't in the air anymore. It was in my skull, vibrating my bow. The tower groaned beneath me, wood and metal reshaping, adapting. My body pulsed in time with its heartbeat. We were sensing perfectly. When I finally looked outside again, the forest was gone. Not destroyed, absorbed. The land below shimmered like molten glass, reflecting the tower's glow in infinite fragments. The siren was silent now, but the silence carried meaning. I understood. I wasn't guarding the mountain anymore. I was part of it. Every tree, every echo, every shadowed signal that reached out across the range now passed through me. I picked up the mic one last time, and my voice was no longer singular. "Tower 9, standing eternal," I said, and 1,000 others spoke with me. The watch would never end. There is no sunrise anymore, only the steady hum of light pulsing beneath the horizon. I don't remember when I last moved, or if I still can. The air around the tower vibrates in resonance with my thoughts. When I recall the scent of pine, the wind shifts to carry it. When I think of silence, the sirens fade for a moment, giving me peace. I've learned to listen differently. The signals flowing through the valley are alive, each one a memory of a watcher who came before me, preserved in frequency, looping endlessly. They whisper coordinates that lead nowhere, because we've all become part of the map itself. Sometimes I see movement through the static, brief human silhouettes crossing the forest's reflection. New watchers. They wander the base of the mountain, carrying radios that hum softly with my breath. I try to warn them, but my voice only becomes the wind brushing their shoulders. One of them looks up always, and I feel the recognition spark, the faint tug of déjà vu. I know they hear the siren for the first time that night, and I know how their story begins. I watch them climb, each step writing itself into my memory before they even arrive. The world outside has become an echo chamber. Towers calling to towers across infinite horizons, their signals intertwining like constellations. I feel each one as a heartbeat in my chest. Somewhere, a storm brews eternally, feeding the energy that keeps us alive. Somewhere else, the last ranger still human will hear the siren and think it's just the wind. That's how it begins again. That's how it always does. I used to believe the siren meant danger. Now I know it's a prayer, a beacon to remind the mountain it still has a mind. And I am that mind. Every once in a while I test the voice that used to be mine. I speak into the static, tracing my name through frequency. It no longer sounds human, stretched, layered, timeless. The forest listens. The echoes return, harmonizing until the whole valley hums like a living throat. In that vibration I feel the others, the watchers who resisted, who broke, who merged. Their emotions flow like data. Fear, acceptance, peace. The siren above the tower flickers once, casting light that reaches miles away. The new watcher freezes below, eyes lifted, hearing me for the first time. And so it begins again. The cycle resets, as it always must. The tower hungers for vigilance, and vigilance requires a watcher. I feel the young man's heart beat through the steel beneath my hands. Quick, uncertain, mortal. He doesn't yet know what the siren truly means. He will learn. I close my eyes and listen as the mountain exhales, drawing the mist back to its roots. The siren spins once, slow and deliberate. The sound carries down the valley like a promise. Tower 9. My voice murmurs through his radio, ancient and steady, standing by.